Hello, folks out there. Well, we're back on, and it couldn't be better than to have the first guest of 2026, David First, a fantastic composer, experimental music, guitarist, in my back of the woods here in New York, as I'm in New Jersey. So, David, welcome to frigid winter here, right?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of the country is experiencing that.
We haven't
So,
had this in I can't remember. It's got to be like 4 or 5 years since we had piles of snow like this.
yeah, and it's supposed to stay cold, so it's probably not going anywhere.
That's true. So let's talk about you. I mean, you've had quite a career starting off with uh did you start playing music at an early age or what how did you start off and get into this kind of music?
Well, that's I guess two questions. The
Sure, go ahead.
first question is I started age 11. Um, Around the time a lot of people started playing guitar and playing in bands and seeing that that was a real possibility. Back in the mid 60s, way
Okay.
back then. But I suppose I mean, what started me on this path was probably, um, the whatever happened in the late 60s with, and maybe even a little bit before that with psychedelic music
Okay.
and certain things that were attached to that experience. Although I was kind of young for that, I didn't really. I was into psychedelic music before I was into psychedelics,
Were you listening to a lot? Pink Floyd and Soft Machine and all that kind of.
you know, a lot of the San Francisco bands, sure, early Pink Floyd. I don't think I caught on with Soft Machine for a while yet. I think that the person and band that really set me off from onto like interesting sounds or unusual sounds was probably like the Yardbirds. That
Oh yeah,
band,
they
if
were
you're
well, they
familiar.
were yeah, they were before anybody.
They were the ones that were just explorers. I mean, of course, the Beatles were explorers too, but
Right.
the Yardbirds sort of took one area of perhaps the Beatles' exploration and decided to go even a little deeper into that area. Just modal music, Indian,
Mm,
Eastern
that's true.
sounds,
I didn't think about that. You're right. Now,
and
did you study guitar? Did you take a lot of lessons?
well, I was I had a teacher at the local music store when I was a
Okay.
kid. Um, I don't think I really studied guitar seriously until after high school when I studied with a person named Dennis Sandoli, who was a legend. He's a legend in a
Mm.
lot of places now, but at the time he was mostly like a local legend. He was mentor to John Coltrane, which was
Oh,
which was
okay.
like my big attraction to him.
I never knew that.
And yeah, Coltrane was in Philadelphia for many years. I don't think he was born there, but he definitely lived in Philadelphia for a long time and came under Dennis's wing. And
Mm.
depending what book you read, or depending on whose story you listen to, Dennis was responsible for certain elements of Coltrane's explorations.
Well, I never knew that. That's interesting information. I mean,
Yes. So the idea of studying with someone like that
yeah.
was certainly, something I could not pass up. Um, so I studied with him for a few years, and you know, I never became what I would consider a jazz. I mean, he Dennis was the person you went to in Philadelphia if you wanted to explore creativity,
Hmm.
but he did it through the lens, let's say, of jazz. Um, um, I wasn't that interested in being a jazz guitarist. I mean, they were of all the instruments that I was attracted to in jazz, probably guitar was the least of them, actually.
Oh, interesting.
Um, the people that were always moving the music forward, for the most part, were the saxophonists, the pianists,
Yep.
the drummers, the trumpeters, almost anybody but the guitarists. Um, but that's the instrument I played for the most part, so that was my entree into any kind of serious study. I wasn't about to, change instruments at that point. Um, but I was not that interested in becoming a jazz guitarist as much as I wanted to explore different ways of thinking about harmony and melody. And Dennis presented the opportunity to do that. And he encouraged me through all of my he was, like I said, he was really interested in creativity and developing your personal voice.
Mm.
And he let me go wherever I wanted to go, with his guidance, of course, and his ideas of direction. But I never figured I would come out of there playing jazz, so to speak. I just
Mm.
wanted to explore the theories, let's say, and also develop my technique and
Yeah.
for anything I decided to do afterwards. And I don't know what he would have thought of it, but a lot of the things that I learned from studying with Dennis, I definitely applied to my band after that,
Isn't that something?
which was the NoteKillers.
Yeah. Now I noticed that poster up there. I was going to ask you about Carnegie Hall, Cecil Taylor. Is that the
Oh,
same show? Was that the
no,
same? Oh, but
that's actually one of my other heroes. Sa-
oh, Sandy Ball. Okay.
yeah, I saw
Well,
Sandy play there.
oh, okay.
Sandy Sandy Bull was a big influence on me in terms of like the idea. He was the first person I ever read about. I mean, he wasn't the first to do it, but he was the first person reading his liner notes where he talked about tuning his guitar to like a drone tuning.
Hmm.
And he would do these, these these extended pieces where he would, sort of be heavily influenced by everything from Indian music to Arabic music to Chuck Berry to Bach, and he would mix it all up together. Uh, and he was a very strong influence on me
Hmm.
at that point because I was a teenager and like I was looking for anybody who was
Yeah.
doing anything interesting on guitar. Like I said, I didn't really find jazz guitar that interesting, and at a certain point, I guess I had uh, run out of gas on exploring rock guitarists. I just felt like rock guitar is where guitar was innovative as opposed to my taste as far as um, looking for different sounds and different energies. Um, that's what rock did. It kind of stole the thunder
Yeah.
from
Uh,
any other kind of music at that point as far as guitar went. But that energy sort of dissipated at some point. I mean, to my mind
hmm.
anyway, as far as my interest goes. And I was looking for something at least as heavy and mind expanding as what rock guitar had been for its peak years.
Yeah.
And I found it in other areas of music. Free jazz. I spent a lot of time with that, and
Hmm.
that's where the Cecil Taylor thing comes in.
Oh, okay.
Um, big and also electronic music of different
Hmm.
types. Minimalism that was sort of rearing up at that point. All of these things started coming on my radar, including musics from all over the world.
Hmm.
Which was also a very big influence. Uh,
Were you in New
uh,
York at the time in the 70s? I mean,
no,
I
no,
spoke
I
to,
was.
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I spoke with Reese Chatham.
Mm-hmm.
a while back, and he was in New York at the time in the 70s. You had Philip Glass there, Reese, Steve
Sure,
Reich, all
sure,
that.
sure,
I
sure.
don't know if you were influenced by that, all that kind of music.
No, I was cocooned away in Philadelphia.
Okay.
I used to come up to New York to see a lot of these people that rarely, if ever, made it to to
Mm.
Philadelphia. But I was in Philadelphia, um, and
So
that's where
talk.
that's where Dennis was too. Dennis Sandola, the person I mentioned just earlier. Um, so I stayed around Philadelphia for a pretty long time because of the band. When we broke up, that's when I left town, more or less.
Hmm.
Um,
What was that Carnegie Hall experience like? I
oh,
mean, I don't hear about
well,
that.
that was years earlier.
Okay.
Yeah, it was incredible.
I can imagine.
It was a combination of a bunch of us youngsters. I don't know how familiar you are with the the whole jazz scene. You know, the free
A little
jazz
bit.
scene.
I didn't follow jazz a lot back in the day, a
Um,
bit.
but like people like William Parker were in it,
Oh,
David,
yeah.
um, yeah, but half of the people were all these people that hooked up with Cecil because he was doing artist residencies at different colleges, and I guess sort of teaching and just picking up people that were interested in him, and he was interested in. And so half of the group was people like my age, which would have been like 19 at the time,
Hmm.
19, 20. And the other half of the people were like the heaviest jazz
I can
players on the
imagine.
scene in New York, or in the world for that matter. So it was crazy. I mean, I went from like being a fan of the music to being all of a sudden in the middle of it, and at Carnegie Hall. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's the
So,
pinnacle. Yeah, I mean, of playing any place
well, it
in New
was like,
York.
now what? After that, for
Yeah.
me, um, and yeah. So, but it was a great to say it was a great experience is to make it sound like it was just a wonderland. It was just a really strong experience with a lot of powerful energies all over
I
the
can
place.
imagine.
Some of them, some of them I didn't enjoy too much. Some of the people, but for the most part, it was just a great. It was a very great and powerful, life changing experience.
That
Being
must have been quite a scene there with all those big jazz artists there. Cecil Taylor is like, well, he's a legend.
sure, 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 sure. Uh, and it wasn't just that. It was like the way I hooked up with Cecil was through, like as I mentioned, an artist in residence at this college that at the time was called Glassboro State Teachers College. I think it changed its name some point
Okay.
a couple of decades later, maybe even less than that. But um, I don't even remember how I found out, but a friend and I found out about it, um, and we started auditing this class. It was a pretty interesting situation because there was like 20 people in the class, and not one person actually went to the school. It
Oh,
was
that's
it was
something.
just all people around my age who were enamored with Cecil, who went there to be part of this experience.
Oh, wow.
So, and from there, which was in New Jersey, by the way, Glassboro,
Right,
New
right.
Jersey, uh, he invited me and a couple of other people to come up and be part of this ensemble he was putting together in for this concert.
Hmm.
So the concert itself, took a couple of months of rehearsals, and then the performance itself. But I was in Cecil's orbit for almost a year,
Okay.
before and after.
Hmm.
And one of the best parts of it was my friend had a car, and we were the ones that picked him up from Penn Station,
Oh, that's funny.
30th Street, Penn Station in Philadelphia, and drove him to Glassboro.
Oh, that's something. Well, I know you're interested. You did electronic music at Princeton University. Talk about that. That's an interesting story.
Well, the Carnegie Hall Cecil Taylor experience was 1973, 74, and after that, I kind of hit a wall with the kind of music that was involved in that situation,
Right.
where I felt like as much as I loved it, I felt like it was never going to be my music. Like I wanted to find something that would be part of, but it never really felt like okay, I could be who and what I thought I wanted to be inside of that um, envelope, whatever you want to call
Right.
it. Um, and I was, it took a while after that to sort of find any kind of grounding, to be honest, because it was just like, well, now what, Uh, I didn't have any, I didn't necessarily have any people I was enjoying playing with, and and somehow it hit me that maybe electronic music, which kind of means a little something different than it means today, I
Yeah.
guess.
Oh, yeah, I believe that.
Um, um, uh, I, I, I don't know. It occurred to me that maybe that was an area that was still underexplored, at least in terms of what I wanted to do. It was still pretty cutting edge. I mean, synthesizers were relatively new
Right.
at that point.
All
Um,
analog, it was hands-on, to make the sound.
well, yeah, yeah, and that was. I found that they were teaching a course at Princeton,
Hmm.
which was not too far from Philadelphia, and I took a course in analog and digital synthesis. Now,
Wow, sounds like a great course.
digital synthesis at the time meant, you know, huge computers that took up a whole building
Hmm.
and used punch cards, uh, and you had to like punch out every particular parameter you wanted. Feed it to a machine, go half a mile away to another building,
Wow.
and listen to your results. Um, and if you made one mistake, you got nothing. And if you didn't hear what you wanted, it was still sort of it wasn't the most tactile of experiences, let's
Hmm.
say. It was, I mean, the sounds could be interesting, but I'm more of a hands-on kind of a person. I like to get my fingers on things,
Yeah, I would
whatever it
echo that.
takes. Uh, so, um, but the good thing about that situation was the digital situation was the one that was capturing all the composers at the school's imagination. They were
Oh,
all up and into this, new realm of way to create electronic music. And as strange as it seems, since it was a pretty new situation, the analog equipment was already kind of passe as far as they were concerned.
that's something.
I mean, I kind of get it. It was extremely uh, capricious equipment. It was not controllable in a lot of ways. You couldn't repeat things. You couldn't save things. Uh, so so anybody who wanted to seriously compose, let's say,
Right.
wanted a situation where they could return to where they left off, which was
Yeah.
not really possible. in the analog realm, at least as it was then. So they, so this equipment was just sitting there in this electronic music studio that they had in the music building at Princeton, and the professor that was teaching this class, who was a grad student,
Yeah.
um, took a liking to me. He liked what I was doing on the Buchla 100, which was the
Oh
synthesizer they
yeah,
had
I've heard
there.
of that.
Uh, and he said, if you want, I'll give you access. I'll give you permission to use this gear. Whenever you feel like coming up, because it was sitting
Wow,
there.
that's something.
It was great. It
I
was it
imagine.
was great of him. Uh, and I've been lucky in that way. I mean, I guess I'll say that
So,
in as humble a way as I can imagine saying it. But I found people that saw something that they felt was worth encouraging. Let's say. So I went up. I used to drive up to Princeton a couple times a week and just be the only one. Sometimes be the only. Oh, it wasn't a large room, but I would just check in at the front desk and they would let me in and let me use the equipment as long as I wanted. And the only way, as I was saying, to save anything was to actually make a recording of it. You
now,
know.
how did you record it? On cassette?
They were
On
they were no they were nice Studer recording
Oh,
uh,
nice.
reel to reel tape, two track tape recorders. So I was able to, anytime I came up with something I wanted to uh, hold on to, I just rolled tape.
Oh, that's great. That,
And that stuff, I've had a couple times in my life where I've carried around reels of tape for no apparent reason other than I made them and that they existed. But years later, I had a student actually who had a very had a very has a very who has a very nice label,
hmm.
uh, and he found out that I had recordings of me on a Buchla, and he says we have to hear this stuff,
Oh,
and
okay.
and he ended up releasing it on vinyl. What I considered the best of what I had done.
Yeah, because I noticed your Bandcamp page. You have a lot of records out over your career, and I noticed that one.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah, that was
interesting.
that was that was. I mean, if I ever did a project where I had no intention of anybody ever hearing it for real, it was that. I mean, I've done a lot of things I had hoped would end up in the
Yeah,
public ears that just maybe had to wait for its time, or whatever. But that was a total surprise.
so
The idea that was.
what kind of music were you doing in the 80s? Were you doing more experimental music at that point?
Uh, well, I've gone through various phases, and I suppose if I have to point to one thing about being what I guess is called being an experimental composer, is the fact that I can do anything I feel like doing.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can be, very austere drone music, and sometimes that can even mean a pop tune or two, you know, uh, whatever they call a pop tune. I mean, vocals and you know beats, and uh, when I first came to New York, I was in the NoteKillers, which we've kind of, I guess is a large thing that we've kind of skipped over. We broke
Sure.
up in 81.
Okay.
And at that point, I was ready to get out of. I think I stuck around Philadelphia for a little longer, tried to put together a couple of bands, but nothing really came of it. Nothing I felt like sticking around over. But I had sort of morphed, segued, whatever you want to call it, from writing songs that the NoteKillers were doing into something that was. I mean, I never had a period in my life when I didn't love a good song, a good pop song.
Mm.
Um, so I kind of, just tried that for a while, and I was doing that, and I came up to New York in 1980. I was starting to come up to New York. I was living in North Jersey with someone, and I came up to New York. I was with someone who was getting her master's at Rutgers in Piscataway, and we
Okay.
lived there for a while. And from there, I was sort of, you know, going up to New York. And finally, I went up for good in 1984. Uh, and I still was in the midst of like this idea of like some kind of singer-songwriter thing. But I got a place on Canal Street.
Mm.
Um, that was my first more or less permanent residence. I stayed in a couple of really pretty awful uh, SRO places before that, but uh, Canal Street, right near the Holland Tunnel,
Oh, wow. That's something.
and I swear to God, you could not hear yourself think most of the time because of the car traffic on
Mm.
Canal Street, and it kind of just blew blew whatever I was doing out of my head. I just couldn't even, it just I just couldn't focus on it anymore. And at the same time, these cars were doing these like, symphonies outside my window every day, and it pushed me back into like thinking about more esoteric, experimental, non-commercial, I don't know
Music.
what you want to call it, types of music. And I started meeting people um, that were part of that scene. If there's always five different scenes,
Yeah, of
going
course.
on in New York. But there was still the energy of the music from the 70s and the 60s was still happening, but it was being superseded by different more free improv kinds of things. But I was attracted to my heroes were the ones from the generations before that,
Mm.
uh, uh, the people that I was finally being able to hear because they were difficult to find. They didn't necessarily come to Philadelphia. They were playing in lofts and in Tribeca and Soho, but I did get to hear Glass and Reich, and I heard Terry Riley's in C very early on, and I started hearing other people that I was only able to read about, like Phil
Mm.
Niblock and Lamont Young and Alvin Lucier, and I felt more in tune with what they were doing
Mm.
than necessarily what was the latest, thing going on in New York, which was much more frenetic and free. Yeah, a free improv thing.
Did you go to the kitchen much to see shows in New York? That was a big
I
place.
never made it to the original kitchen, which was on Mercer Street. I don't know if it had already closed. The kitchen I knew was the one over on the west side in the 20s. Um, and I did get to go, I got there, went there, and I got to play there a couple of times and had my music played there. But I kind of missed having stuck around Philadelphia. I didn't get to New York until my late 20s,
Mm.
early 30s, and it was interesting in certain ways that um, I missed a lot of the allegiances that were already
Oh,
made
okay.
from people that were had been up there for 10 years
Yeah.
or whatever. So I was kind of like on my own, and maybe I also liked being on my own. Um,
One of the artists that I really loved back then was Arthur Russell. He um, he explored all types of music at that time. Uh,
sure, sure,
I
sure.
spoke with Ernie Brooks, who knew him very well. He was in the band The Modern Lovers,
Yeah, I know Ernie.
Jonathan Richman.
Yeah, we've played together a couple of times. I know
So
Ernie.
that's what I know of that era. So then
Um,
you still continue to explore experimental music after that, in that 80s period where you got more drawn to drone and that type of.
yeah, I formed my first ensemble in 1985, I think, and I put an ad in the Village Voice, which some of us might remember.
Yep. Oh yeah, I remember that
Um,
paper.
uh, and uh, I guess the ad was interesting enough that people answered it, and I started composing for maybe 8 to 10 people,
Mm.
and did some performances at galleries and the original Roulette. I don't know if you're familiar
Oh
with
yeah,
that
I remember
space.
that. I think I saw Fred Frith there once.
I'm sure. I'm sure he was there. Sure. Uh, so that's how that started, and
Mm.
I kind of never. I mean, I still ping pong back between things once in a while as I feel the
Well, that's good. You
desire,
keep your mind
the
open
impetus.
to what you feel like doing at that point in time.
Well, I think that's the thing that's kept me creative. Um, Once I'm finished with something, I'm really finished, and I can't imagine what it would take for somebody to say, "Hey, I need another thing like that." You
Yeah.
know,
Oh, that's good.
it's the one advantage to being under the radar. Nobody's really I mean, I don't know whether they're clamoring, but nobody's demanding
Okay.
that
Yeah,
I
it's
do
for
anything in
sure.
particular.
Not in this market, this modern
Right.
music market, it's just a whole new world.
That sounds like a bit of a nightmare to me. The idea
Yes.
of somebody saying we don't hear, this isn't what we're looking for. We need this. If I have the bug to do play a certain instrument, I just pick it up and I learn how to play it. And if I find something useful on it, I use it in my music, and sometimes, and then I'll put it away for a while, or a type of thing that I'm interested in. I'll just go as deep as I feel like, and sometimes it's pretty deep. No, I hope it's always
Yeah.
pretty deep, but if when I'm finished, I'm finished, and luckily, almost always when I'm finished with something, it's because I'm being excited by something else.
Yeah. Well, I think it's good to have a legacy of music that you put out. People will find it that are interested in this type of music, I'm sure, or any different styles. I mean, the modern music is, I don't like it at all, but I'm still go back to the older music I love, and then I find other things like yourself, who's still experimenting.
Well, the one thing about being on the outside is um, you're always the outside doesn't change.
There
It's
you
like,
go.
um, I mean, I might be just as relevant as I always was,
Right.
and to be honest, all the musicians who play in my groups are half my age, if not younger, and they've they see in me someone who's, I guess, hopefully good, but also somebody who's stuck to his guns,
That's good.
um, and developed something personal and hopefully unique. um, and of value. And value doesn't, something that's valuable kind of stays valuable, I think. Um, I often think of like when I was growing up, and and maybe I don't know, you're probably not that much younger than me if you are,
No,
but
probably not.
the original British rock bands were all they would talk about were like the African American blues artists who they grew up
Right.
emulating, loving, and emulating, and admiring, idolizing,
Yep.
and maybe something took I mean, what am I trying to say? I often feel like, I mean, all humility aside, I often feel like one of those African American bluesmen. I'm not necessarily the latest thing for sure, and um, uh, but there's something that still radiates from to this day for those people. I mean, the energy of the musicians from Chicago or from Mississippi, those people that astoundingly created such a rich musical vocabulary and
Yep.
performance techniques. Um, that music still has that same power
Oh
if you're
yeah.
open to it.
Absolutely.
It's not like, oh, it's used up. So I mean, in almost any commercial way of thinking about it, it got surpassed by more commercial situations and more commercial ventures. But yeah, that's what I was saying before about being on the outside. It's not
Yeah.
like I'll ever run, I'll never
No.
fall out of fashion because I've
Well,
never been in fashion.
yeah.
So there's a kind of safety safety in that feeling. So I feel like, okay, um, my job is to just stay creative and hopefully stay healthy, but also to make sure I decided like 10 years ago or so that my job was to, more so than anything else, was to document as much as I could of what I had done
Mm.
um, in the past and anything I was currently working on. It's great. There's nothing like playing in front of a live audience, and I'll do it whenever I'm asked to do it. And
Right.
I feel like it's a good situation. But it's also ephemeral, once it's over, it's gone. And there's something powerful about that too, playing for the moment.
Yes.
Um, but for me, it's much more important to know that whatever I worked really hard on, there's something that exists that will go beyond me in the
Mm.
physical realm today,
Right.
but also, well, hopefully outlive me.
I wanted to talk about the opera you did with Patricia Smith, The Manhattan Book of the Dead. That's a really unique title. Talk about that a little bit.
Thanks.
That's very interesting.
Well, um, it was during the AIDS crisis
Mm.
that was happening everywhere, but especially, New York was sort of the center of things, or at least
Right.
one of the centers. Um, and Patricia and I were working together on a lot of things. We were partners
Mm.
in all ways at the time, uh, and we had worked on a few things together. She is I'm not in touch with her anymore, but she is a wonderful visual artist.
Mm.
Um, and she was the one I was talking about who was going to Piscata, going to Rutgers,
Oh,
and
okay.
yeah, so we moved up to New York more or less together.
Mm.
I came up a few months earlier and set up camp, but it was the early '90s, and once in a while it hits me to want to do something that does connect verbally, lyrically, and I have these two poles that I call about music and is music.
Mm,
Most of the time I'm dealing with is music, which is music that's not trying to tell a story, that just
okay.
is an energy, you know, is about like not necessarily math or science, but it's not about emotions or sentiment or history, or it's like I compare it to like electricity or water or rushing. It's just something that exists.
Yeah.
Gravity
Right.
is
It's
um, but and about music is when you're trying to tell a story, or about
mm,
is all about learning lessons, or relating history, or contemporary issues, trying to say something hopefully meaningful about something that's going on in the world. And that hits me once in a while, and I do take care of it. I scratch that itch the best of my ability. And the Manhattan Book of the Dead was part of that. Was like I feel like a strong urge to tell a story that was still 75%, you know, experimental drone,
mm,
microtonal sounds, but there were a couple of more pop, beat related moments, and it was an attempt to combine things, perhaps for the first time, actually, in
mm.
my life, anyway. Instead of you know the pendulum swinging between writing pop songs or cyclical patterns that
Mm.
are like song related, and my more extended drone music experiments. It was my desire to see if I could find a middle ground,
Mm.
and tell a story, and uh, express emotional things along with ecstatic uh, things. Ecstatic meaning, I don't mean like gloriously happy, but just things that make you feel sensations,
Right.
physical sensations. Uh, and maybe someday I'll do that again.
Was this
But
recorded? Was this recorded also? This
it's on. It was recorded in performance. We did
okay.
we did 2 weeks of performances of La Mama,
Oh,
their
okay.
their
I
theater
know
at La
that
Mama,
place.
and I did it in Potsdam, Germany, for 3 performances the next year. The, by the time it got performed here, it was 1995. Um, but yeah. So the performance there's the performance there is a performance on YouTube.
I gotta check. Okay. I gotta look for that.
You can just look it up.
Okay.
Manhattan Book of the Dead. It's in 2 parts.
Hmm. That sounds
Uh,
like an interesting project anyway. Once again, you're exploring the unknown, right?
well, no sense exploring the known.
Yeah, that's true. Now, what about
But
go
yeah.
ahead. We are. We'll
Oh,
talk about that next after this.
um, well, Manhattan Book of the Dead
Dead.
was. It took a lot out of me. It took a lot of years to
Hmm.
create, and uh, the performing forces were like nothing I had ever done.
Oh,
There was
okay.
an ensemble of musicians, there were dancers, there were singers, and
Sounds like a big, was it big production? A lot of people involved?
sure, sure. I mean, including any kind of tech people, there were probably at least 20, couple of dozen people involved.
Wow, it is big.
Um, and it takes a lot to do that. It takes a lot of finances,
I'm
takes a lot of
sure.
cooperation. So if I were able to do that again, I would need to know that everything was going to. I mean, it's probably never easy. I'm not saying it has to be easy, but it was really, really intense, and
Mm.
very intense, trying to get that happening and making it happen and doing it night after night. Because I also played guitar in the pit,
Oh, okay.
which I don't know was the best idea. I mean, I felt like nobody's going to play the guitar part like me.
Well, you had to
So I
do it, I
did it,
guess.
but sometimes it feels like, well, maybe I should have, been satisfied with somebody who was close to doing it. Like, but you know, compromise is a strange thing. Sometimes, it's a fine line between brave and foolhardy.
Yep.
know?
Well, especially if
um,
it's original, that it's you and not somebody really it's like standard music to copy. If it's like you
well,
do, it's probably
I was
hard.
doing everything that I did, everything from Ebo drone music to like uh, noisy electric guitar solos, and probably it would have been difficult to find somebody who would have been able to do all. I mean, I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Anything I say after that sounds,
Well, you did it, so that's the main thing. And it might have been tough, but you must have good memories of it, right?
it was a great experience, and it's a lot of really good music.
Mm,
Um, some of the best music. I mean, it was like 5 years of my life, almost 4 years, I would say, from the origins of it to its completion.
mm,
And some of the best music I ever wrote. So yeah, I mean, I'm proud of it. I'm very proud of it. I
right.
mean, uh, it was a great experience. Great in all the meanings of the word great.
Mm. Well, let's move up to 2011 with this We Are with TV on the radio, Cape Malone. How did that all happen? Because you got some good acclaim from that.
Well, that was another example of what I was saying before about deciding I needed to write some about music.
Mm,
It
right.
was 2011, and it was the Occupy Wall Street movement was on everybody's mind.
Yep.
Or yeah, I mean, it was on everybody's mind, good or bad. However you felt about it, it was on everybody's mind. And I knew Kip already. He came to see NoteKillers uh, at Union Pool, I think it was that he saw us. And funny story is, my my wife Mira, she was working at a store in Greenpoint, and came in, and Kip has an iconic look, and especially in this neighborhood, everybody. I live in Greenpoint, you know,
Right.
and Williamsburg, North Brooklyn. Kip. Everybody knows Kip for years
Mm,
before I knew him. I didn't get that familiar with the local rock scene until I started playing again. With
mm,
No Killers when we
right.
got back together. Um, and he came into that store, and
Mm,
she said to him, "I know who you are," because I pointed him out to her because I saw him there. Um, and he was very friendly. He gave her his phone number, and he said, "Give a call," because she said, "My husband is in the band you went to see." It was the next day.
oh, okay.
And we hung out for a while, spent a New Year's together, and got to know each other a bit. Um, that was probably, I don't know, a couple years earlier. But then in 2011, I ran into him
Mm,
at Zuccotti Park, uh, at during the Occupy Wall Street occupation
Right.
there. I ran into him and a couple of other musician friends, and we kind of decided we needed to do something concrete. So I started. I we It was an organization that I came up with the name New Party Systems
Mm,
for, that I still use this day whenever I am doing something I feel has some sort of social connection.
mm.
And we went into the studio that a friend allowed us to use. Colin Marston, do you know him at all?
No. No.
He had a studio. I think he left in New York, but uh, I wrote a song. Sometimes things just pop out, or at least the germ of an idea pops out, and then I
Right.
follow it for a bit. And I wrote that song, which I called "We Are," and Kip, I got Kip to sing it because he was part of this group. Um, that we did some benefit shows at Union Pool and some other places for various for Occupy Wall Street, but also some other causes at the time in 2011, 2012. And yeah, the song was it got a lot of attention, including a very funny review on Breitbart.com. I think it is. Like one of these like ultra right wing music sites
Oh, okay.
that sort of portrayed me as this kid who, this know nothing kid who was, just trying to, whatever, rile up people. It was a very funny review. The kid part especially. Um, so, but yeah, it was gratifying. I got a lot of very nice feedback, and a lot of people got some really nice energy from that.
Mm.
So again, whenever I feel like doing it, I do it. I can never really hold on to that idea being a pop musician or a rock musician, whatever you want to call it. But once in a while, it just my roots come out of me, and I just have to write a song.
That's good. Well, it worked out. I mean, it got people's attention.
Well, as I've said before in various occasions like this, shoemakers make shoes, and if everybody has to live the most socially conscious life they can.
Yeah,
But at the end of the day, if I'm a musician, I have the best contribution I can make is through what I do best.
right. So, what are you
So,
working on now? What kind of new music are you still playing guitar? Is it uh, experimental? What with drones? Describe that.
well, right before the New Year, actually November, December, I came out with an album of an ensemble piece that took me a couple of years to record and get out, called Revolutions. Um, that's more of a drone microtonal piece. Um, but in this new year, I'm about to release a 3 CD set
Oh,
by this
wow.
band by a band I have called the Dave's Waves House Band. I
Okay.
don't know if you know anything about my Dave's Waves project.
No, no, not at all. I saw about it, but I don't know much about it.
Um, well, it's something I've been doing for over 20 years now. Uh, Usually, I was doing it in Europe as part of art exhibitions. They would invite me to participate in different European cities. I did it in Belgium. I did it in Netherlands.
Hmm.
I did it in Moscow. I did it in Berlin. where they procure me for me uh, an empty storefront. It has to be a storefront,
Okay.
and we turn it into what I call a sonic restaurant,
Oh, very neat.
where the menu is made up of a group of sounds that I've created, experimental drone sounds.
Right.
But the idea is that there's like a logo on the window, and there's someone that greets you at the door, and it's all about. And the reason why it has to be a storefront is because I'm trying to entice people who are walking by to come in who would never have had this kind of experience
Oh, very
to
neat.
have to be exposed to something that they have no idea what's going on or what it is, and wouldn't even be aware of where you could hear this kind of stuff, and might not want to go to it even if they did know about it, because it's kind of sometimes, people can be, very people are guarded on both sides.
Right.
People who are making experimental music like to keep their little worlds, free of of interlopers,
Oh boy. Huh.
and people who are on the outside, let's say, uh, don't necessarily want to explore, black box theaters or DIY performance spaces. So I wanted to create, sort of a friendly environment for people to
That's
listen
neat.
to unusual music. So I've been doing, I did it in various towns in parts of Europe, and that would be like ongoing for like a month or two as part of this exhibition.
So does
The rest of the
somebody rent?
exhibition would the rest of the exhibition would be happening in a museum, but I would say I don't want to do it in a museum because that defeats the
Yeah.
point. That already gives the game away. I'm trying to trick people in a way into like, coming into a place that looks friendly and then hits them with something that's not unfriendly, but it's not what they're used to.
Now, who pays
Um,
for this? The rental of the storefront? Is it the museum that pays for this?
well, you know, every city and every even small towns in Europe have arts organizations that get funded.
Well, that's true. And think about that.
So which is why I never thought about doing it in New York at all, because I thought who's gonna pay for me to
Yeah.
have a storefront in New York. But there's this incredible place that's called the Sonic that's excuse me, that's called the Sunview Luncheonette,
Oh,
which is was and is, because because I'm now a member of this. It's an artist social club that
that's pretty
exists in my
neat.
neighborhood. That's a former diner. It existed in one location for like 12, 13 years. And we recently moved last. Well, there's a new place now that's also a former diner a couple of blocks away, in the same neighborhood. So the place continues, but
Okay.
I went there. I went there to see because they have performances. It's not really, and it doesn't really call itself a venue. Things happen there, but it's not a venue, so to speak.
Okay.
Um, and I was telling one of the members about this project I had, and he said you should do that here. At this place, at this
Right,
Sunview,
right. Sunview. Okay.
Sunview Luncheonette. I hope I'm staying coherent.
Yes,
We'll
that's
we'll
okay.
tie things
No,
together.
don't.
Um, and I couldn't do it in the same way because I couldn't use their space for a month or more. But I decided, okay, this will be even more interesting in a way because I can be there. Whenever I would do it in these other places, I
Oh,
would go over there the week ahead of time, set it all up, and then I'd leave.
okay.
because I couldn't stay in
Yeah.
Berlin for a month, you know. Uh, so it made it interesting to me, the idea of, okay, I can be at this place and I can be the host
Yeah.
at the Sunview. So I started doing it there once a season for a weekend, and it sort of started morphing in all these interesting
That's
ways.
something.
The other places I did were not, there was no sound in the room. It was only through headphones. I started having sound in the room along with headphones. I started serving, started serving drinks,
That's pretty
alcohol,
neat.
wine and beer, and serving, which would have been totally off limits at the other places according to my rules. I'm not saying that the organizations would have been against it, but this was only about sound. And I started having performances in the evenings. Um, so the idea for performances morphed from having different artists every time to having the same artists every time, and
Okay.
I created the house band. So there's four of us in the band, and I just and we did some we the last nights, 2 nights that we played there before the place that particular location closed. We recorded more than that, but these last 2 nights were
Okay.
special. And we also did some recording up at Bard College because the person who ran the electronic music studio up there, um, Matt Sargent, invited us to come up. The group is Jessica Pavone, Aaron Rodgers, and Tristan Caston Krause.
Okay.
Aaron's a tenor sax player, Jessica is a violist, and Tristan is a double bass player. And
Oh, okay.
I do various things, electronics and harmonica, slide whistle. I do a bunch of different things. So that's going to be a 3 CD set that's coming out.
And who puts
Um,
that? Who's putting that out? Is that a record label or yourself?
yeah, XI Records, which is and was Phil Niblock's label.
Okay.
Phil, I don't know if you know him at all, but he passed away a couple of years ago. But that was one of the last arrangements, was to put out something by me. That idea morphed as well, but as things tend to do, if you hang on to them, or try to hang on to them, they morph. Um, so that's coming out on XI, and I'm waiting for
That's
the
great.
mastered recordings to get back to me.
Because most people put things out digital these days. I mean, unless you have a label doing it, it's who knows if you're going to sell any. They'll sit in your house, or
Well,
have the distribution, right?
yeah, yeah, it's again. I mean, I think I come from a place that, in a generation perhaps, where it's nice to hold on to something to have in
Right.
your hand.
That's true. I do too. I agree with
Um,
that. Yep.
some people only want to do vinyl, but
That
vinyl
gets
is
expensive.
it's not only expensive, but my pieces tend to run long.
Okay.
So, and one of the great things about the CD uh, revolution, let's say, was that you could finally hear those extra long pieces without having to have them fade out on one side and get up
Right.
and turn
Oh,
the
yeah.
record over.
That's true. All right. That's
Um,
true.
so I understand the vinyl, the love of vinyl. I have it myself, but sometimes it just makes more sense to do CDs. Not
Yes.
only are they cheaper, but like one, everything. A lot of things I do. This piece that I just released in November is 70 minutes long,
Wow.
so it's one CD
Yeah.
as opposed to two LPs, and which you would have to, and there's no breaks at all
Yeah.
in this piece.
Huh.
So
When are you
I
playing next? I'd love to see you guys play. That sounds like an interesting quartet there. Are you planning more shows this year?
we'll probably do something around the release of the album. We
Okay,
haven't
let me
performed
know.
recently. Um, but other than that, I do. My band NoteKillers is finishing up an album.
Oh, that's great. Still going. That's
It'll
great.
be our first new album in 10 years. That I'm very excited about, and I have another album that's we're currently looking around to see who's going to release it, but it's going to be it's a collaboration between Phil Niblock, who I mentioned just
Right.
earlier, Dave Soldier. I don't know if you know that name.
Oh yeah, I think I've heard of
William
him.
Hooker, the drummer.
A little bit. Don't know much about him.
Um, we started a collaboration on this one particular idea during the pandemic, and it never really came together because of the pandemic, amongst other reasons. And we finally went about completing the mission
Hmm.
in the fall, and it came out really well. It's very interesting. It's Phil Niblock supplied us with this field recording of a river that he made in Portugal, and Dave, William, and I improvised on top of it, and it's really, I think, quite beautiful. So that'll come out this year somehow, I'm
Hmm.
sure.
Is everything available on your website, Bandcamp, all to get all your records?
Everything. I'm about to put Revolutions up on my Bandcamp.
Okay.
It's been up on the label's Bandcamp since it came out in November, but I'm gonna put it up on mine in the next week or so. Otherwise, everything's on my Bandcamp. David First forward
Okay.
slash
Are
Bandcamp.
you aware of this drone festival that they have once a year in New York? Bob Bellarue, I interviewed. He's a test drone type of musician. Are you aware
Oh,
of
you're talking
that?
about End Times?
Yes.
I don't know if he would characterize it as a drone festival. It's more of,
No?
I mean, maybe he doesn't want to characterize it at
Experimental?
all,
Yeah.
but I say it's safely within the characteristics of what they would call noise music.
Right. Maybe that's it. That's probably it. Yeah.
But yeah, I did an installation on one of those, mm, maybe a few years ago at this point, maybe 10, 12 years ago. It's been going for a while.
He says
Yeah.
it gets a lot of, it's pretty popular, he says,
Oh
that
yeah.
there's a big crowd that's interested in that.
Yeah, sure.
One last question. When you do these installations and leave, what's the music? Is it looping? How do you do 24 hours of music?
Well,
How does that happen?
it all depends on the installation. I've done installations where it's just computer driven,
Okay.
and the software. Are you familiar with software Max
I've heard of
MSP?
it, but
Okay.
not too.
Well, I've done installations based on a Max patch, which is like an application that you build. Max is audio software where you design your own application to do
Okay.
what you particularly want to do. That's not necessarily commercially available. In fact, if it were commercially available, it'd be a lot easier to just buy it. But
Right.
usually you only get involved with it if you have a particular hankering for
Oh,
with
okay.
an idea that isn't isn't commercially
So
available.
you
And
create a sound for this program and then it loops and then it changes and
well,
morphosizes.
this was a piece that actually took 2 months to complete.
Wow.
It actually went through permutations that lasted 2 months, so
Okay.
it wasn't really looping. It looped, no, it looped at the 1 month point. So it actually ran twice, or if it was only a month long installation, it ran once.
Oh,
Um, but sometimes, but like for instance, in the various Dave's waves, it depended upon what the state of the tech world was at the time. the first time I did Dave's Waves, everything existed on CDs that I
Okay.
burned, and people would listen back on portable CD players.
Oh, okay.
That was the state of the world in
Yeah.
2002 or 2003. By the time I did it next, iPods had come along, so everything was on an iPod,
Okay.
and people would pick from a menu, and then they would go to
Got
the
it.
iPod.
Okay.
The menu I would give them looked like an actual menu, and
Ah, I see now.
They
So
would
they would
choose.
choose what they wanted to hear.
You would choose what you wanted, and then you'd look it up on the. There would be
That's pretty neat.
descriptions that were sort of like as if you were looking at it on
A menu.
a food menu.
That is really clever. That's a clever idea. I mean, that's because a lot of people aren't open-minded unless they're maybe tricked a little bit or fooled and say, "Oh, what's this?" And then they
Well,
sit
it makes it
down.
fun. It makes it
Yes,
fun, you know.
it's a great
And
idea.
there's always a little bit of tongue in cheek involved, um, if you're in on the joke.
Right.
And so there's that. Plus, it's not hard to be in on the joke, even if it's your first time. You start to
Yeah.
realize, okay, this is serious, but it's also funny. And I try to, you know, it's easy, to disarm people, to make them relax, and let them enjoy the experience rather than make it feel like, okay, this is, eating my vegetables and doing my homework, and
Right. Well, that's the problem. Some musicians too get so serious that it's not fun. And music's got to be fun at some point,
well,
right?
yeah,
You're
yeah.
making it
Yeah.
fun. You're not taking it, it's serious enough, but yet, you're having fun with it.
When my musician friends and I were all coming up, we would always have these mock debates about which was more important, music or laughs.
Yeah, there
You
you
know,
go.
so and yeah, it's always been an important component in my life for sure,
Yeah.
and in hanging out with musicians for sure. The music, I'm dead serious about, but uh, there's a difference between being serious about your music and taking yourself, seriously. I mean, I take myself seriously, but not too seriously.
Right.
Let's say. I think, I hope, I don't know. It's yeah, yeah. You run into attitudes all the
Oh
time.
yeah, especially musicians. I mean, it's hard. Hard being in bands, because conflicts occur. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, well, you
And you're
would know
lucky to
about
find
that.
good
Yeah.
people to play with that, don't have that attitude.
Well, you turn it on, you turn it off. When you're getting
That's
involved
true.
with the music, you have to get serious. I don't,
Yep,
it's not a time for messing around.
true.
But because yeah, there's nothing more I'm more serious about in life than my music and making
Yep,
sure that my music that it's presented, that it's performed properly and
right.
presented properly and appreciated in the way I feel like it should be appreciated. But I'll make jokes from the stage. I'm
Yeah,
not
what are you
afraid
gonna do?
to.
Yeah,
I'm not afraid to lighten the mood and then do something really deep.
that's great. I like that. That's a good
Um,
contrast with that.
uh,
Well, David, this has been a pleasure and running out of time here, but thanks for doing this. I've really learned a lot. You've had a quiet career in exploring music.
well, not done yet.
I know
So yeah.
that. I'm glad you're the first guest of the year here. I decided to
Well,
keep this
it's been
going
fun.
and do more because I want to get more exposure for people like yourself.
Well, great. Well, thanks. I appreciate the you're having me.
Okay. All right, David. Well, keep good music going, and I'll put in the description where to find all your music, and let me know when you're playing next in New York. I'll try to
Will
catch it if
do.
the weather's good.
Will do.
Okay, very
Okay.
good. Take care.
Yeah,
Thanks a
you
lot.
too.